Yeah, the moment I met him, I fell in love with him. We were so much alike. We had the same sense of humor. We had the same interests. He was engaging. He was active. He was all of these things that just, I was happy when I was with him. And we were friends. We got along. We laughed constantly. So that's who I met, and that's who I fell in love with. And that's not who came back from Africa.
Well, when I returned from my mission, particularly my last mission that I was on, when I was in the military in the Congo or Uganda and Zaire, and when I came home, my wife was the first one that started to recognize the changes that I was undergoing. She started to notice that there was sleeplessness. I was unable to sleep. I would get up and I had insomnia. I was worrying a lot more. I had anxiety, heightened anxiety and hypervigilance, and then I started to have panic attacks.
I was losing him, and I couldn't figure out how to make that contact again.
That is the role of a soldier, is to be hypervigilant. You have to be aware all the time of everything that's going on around you. So your sense of anxiety is heightened from the moment that you step on the ground in an operational theater. Unfortunately, it's a switch that's not easily turned off.
And I must have had my guard down that day, and he walked through the door, and that was the first time I think I really looked in a long time and said, oh my God, he's in so much pain.
And after a while it wears down on the body. It wears down the body, it wears down the mind, and then there's a breaking point. And usually if it goes far enough, then that's when it can develop into post-traumatic stress disorder. And this was just following the genocide in Rwanda within a 2-year time frame. So there were still a lot of people that were displaced. And displaced persons is something that is very, very difficult to describe. It's not just people that are nomadic and they're moving from one region to another. These are people that have absolutely nothing. And when I say nothing, they have nothing. They have no food, they have no water, they have no medicine, they have no care, they have nothing. And they're not wanted. They're completely neglected by their own country and by every other country. Nobody wants them. Babies were placed down and buried beneath rocks by their mothers because the mothers they could no longer provide for their children. They had no milk left to provide for their children, and the mothers themselves were dying. So it was very difficult. And when I came home, I had to live with a sense of guilt and a sense of shame.
But I think part of the reason why he doesn't talk about it is because when he's here with me and with our son, he's dealing with the guilt of what he feels he's put us through. And to see that kind of suffering and then to have to leave it, I think is devastating, because you always think, maybe I should have stopped anyway.
And I was hesitant to get help, because being a soldier, you're taught to not be what we call weak. You need to be strong all the time. And particularly when it comes to something that's being identified as a mental illness, well, that's the extreme of weakness in the military culture. At least it was at that point in time.
He's a different version of the guy I first met. We always say there's a part of him back in Africa, and maybe someday we'll go back and get it, or maybe it's not there anymore, I don't know. But the underlying person that he is, and that he was, is still there. So he's still the same good person he was. And he's still someone that I think is the bravest person I've ever known.